Today's guest is Jake Morrill. Jake is the founder of Generation to Generation Leadership Coaching and a faculty member at the Bowen Center for the Study of the Family. He spent nearly 2 decades as a minister, has coached family businesses and nonprofits through big transitions, and served as U.S. Army Reserve chaplain. That is very cool, Jake. Jake brings family systems theory to life with stories from boardrooms, congregations, and families, always with an eye toward resilience and real world leadership. He's the author of several books, including the upcoming Unshakable, a family systems playbook for NextGen Leaders. You're doing everything, Jake. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, having a good time and enjoying the chance to talk with you.
Oh, I so appreciate you coming in. I'm excited to talk to you about this idea of applying systems thinking to businesses and to know you more.
Yeah, yeah, likewise. Likewise. Thanks. This is great. I mean, I think what you're doing with this podcast is helping people in bite-sized ways get exposed to this thing that I think so important. So thanks for your work.
Oh, absolutely. So let's tell me a little bit more about. We were just talking offline, but tell me a little bit more about your growing up and your parents were these activists.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. My parents were both public leaders in different ways, institutionally and in the congregation, and also out there in the public square. My have this memory of my dad taking my older sister and me to protests, and somehow it seemed like the reporters always found him, and so there was a mixture of pride and embarrassment as as my father, who I think has never been embarrassed in his life, would give his, his talking points. Yeah, that was quite an experience, and for me, as a chunky third grader with thick glasses, to figure out how to um, be in that family that acted in those ways, and also connect with my classmates who
Mm.
would be Southern Baptist, fairly traditional, and I am grateful for that. To say bicultural is probably a little strong, but to move through the waters of traditional culture and conservative culture, while also being steeped in um, values of people on the left in my house, really taught me. It was a challenge to figure it out for myself and to stay connected. Yeah.
Mm. To, to manage the tensions of these kind of poles and within each within each company group.
Yeah, yeah, that's right, and figure out, I mean, what a blessing to have such a broad palette and to
Yeah,
figure out which from each worked for me.
beautiful. What do you think? What's something you picked up from navigating that process? You think equality?
Uh, Certainly curiosity. What is going on here?
Mm.
Which at worst can be sort of a calculating tentativeness, how to play the room. I have that in me at my worst. Uh,
Mm.
but on a good day, that means that I am better at slowing a rush to judgment or fabricating a story, but really trying to observe and test what's happening.
Mm. Mm. I love that. There's two sides to it. The side that can be like uh, I don't know how calculating, and
Yeah.
then the side that can be kind of just aware and able to help navigate and choose. Um, I like that idea that there's two qualities, two sides to every character uh, trait. You know.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. Well, and also I think this mentor, camp counselor, when I was a teenager, and I was a sort of a self-assured pontificator on all kinds of things as a 15-year-old. I know it's hard to imagine. Uh, his general feedback to me was, "It ain't necessarily so." That old Porgy and Bess line, it ain't necessarily so. Where Buddhists say, "Don't believe everything you think," and that really serves me well.
Mm,
In the last 36 hours, 48 hours since the assassination of Charlie
mhm,
Kirk, um, I am grateful to have on social media a very wide span of political and social perspectives. And so it is fascinating to me to observe a myriad of perspectives on
mhm,
um, the life, the legacy, the implications, how to interpret the facts of what went down.
mm.
And for me, who does have that 15-year-old pontificator inside me, it does slow my roll, to say, oh,
Mm.
okay, hadn't thought of that. Oh, wait a minute, hadn't thought of that. And all, I hope, in service of me forming, my own perspective. But
Yeah,
that's useful.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it can be so useful to have that delay process to be able to think a little bit instead of just reacting to whatever the hell is out there.
Yeah,
I, s-
yeah,
I- I saw a lot of that the last 48 hours.
yeah, yeah. And I do think the false urgency, the accelerated cycles, uh, really takes a toll on the capacity of humankind to respond and adapt to the serious challenges. I mean, it seems like if I expend myself on crafting a hot take in response to the headlines, that is an hour that I have not spent reflecting on, polarization, climate change, inequity, lack of compassion, these other,
Mm.
century-long problems, or maybe problems that have been with humanity the whole ride.
Yeah, yeah. That that immediacy gets in the way of thinking about solving bigger problems.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
maybe I'm just not as fast as other people. I don't know.
Uh, Maybe they're too fast. One of the biggest lessons for me in the last few years has been realizing that just not everything's an emergency, and not everything is
Yeah,
demanding of being responded to right now. Just
yeah,
slow it. Like I think you said, it's slowing down.
yeah, yeah. Yep, yep. I'm really informed by uh, people who come from families and communities that have had to learn the slow work of survival.
Yeah.
People who come from families that knew that this ain't over tomorrow, and so what are the principles and habits and strategies that work for in
Hmm.
that light, and so yeah.
Yeah. How does so how does what we're talking about and what you were just saying apply to relationship systems? Is
Yeah, yeah. Um, the congregation that I first served, I think I got the job because nobody else wanted it. There were very few applicants. They were coming through over a decade of active conflict. The my predecessor as minister had left after sexual misconduct and financial
Mm,
theft. There was just there was some work to do, and
mm,
I, with my divinity school degree, thought that I would be the solution to all their woes. And instead, looking back, I tell the story that it took about 5 years to put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Mm,
The various realms of trust and authority proper to the office of minister took a while to earn, regardless of the job description. People weren't so sure if they were in a crisis that the minister was somebody to trust. So there was a group of
mm,
people over here that really held that authority, and people weren't so sure when it came to financial oversight, that the minister really could be trusted. And so, for me, after initial disappointment that I wasn't received as the second coming, I had to or what I think was required to put Humpty Dumpty back together again was the slow incremental work of exposure,
mm,
reactivity in them and me, the oh no, uh, and then learning to adapt to somebody who, wasn't smart or whatever, but could be trusted with pastoral care and finances.
mhm,
And as I say, that was 5 years, but it wasn't time passing. It wasn't like I just could hide in my office for 5 years and emerge and then trust would be there. It was to use that time for the incremental adaptive process, where, thanks to coaching that I was getting, this old minister in town who had studied with Ed Friedman and said I
mm,
could come to his office every Thursday morning and tell him what was going on, as long as I was willing to think about it and wasn't going to be helpless. Those were his conditions. So every Thursday morning for about 5 years, I sat with Boyd Carter as he chuckled at all of my disasters. And, and little by little, tried to get as clear as I could about my goals, my principles, my boundaries, my next
mm,
experiment, in this system that, for its own protection, had learned to be wary of somebody called Rev.
mm, mm. They had all this apprehension that you were up against from the what happened previously.
Yeah.
Um, how how did that experience of with that congregation shape kind of your next steps? Sounds like every a lot of things in there you took with you forward.
Yeah. I think as a younger brother of an older sister, I developed the capacity for razzle dazzle. And uh, and I come from a line of show offs, so I was drawing from a deep well, and that did not suffice. If I wanted to promote enduring change, if I wanted to
Mm,
pursue enduring growth in myself, then the razzle dazzle, the burst of words or quick solutions uh, didn't work. And so it was developing a different muscle that required patience and a longer view, um,
mm,
the application of, or the lenses of Bowen theory to be able to look at a situation in its systemic and dynamic complexity. I began to develop a reputation among other clergy and nonprofit leaders around town, um, for somebody who thought in this way, that this way that I didn't invent. I mean, it was just Bowen theory, but I was, as I integrated it, and so I began to get phone calls from people in, intractable messes, and
yeah.
uh, and so that was sort of the seed bed of this vocation that has, um, rolled out from there. I got some education and certifications and stuff like that, but it really was this sort of unbidden, trying to be a thinking partner with people.
Mm, mm. I like that. So, do you still have a little bit of the razzle dazzle?
Oh yeah, that's useful, you know. Yeah, I mean, that's I preached at a big church last Sunday in Atlanta where they do not know me. And so, with a stranger up there in the pulpit, there might have been some apprehension.
Hmm.
My first line was, "I am not sure I know what I'm doing up here." And then I was quiet. And I was like, and then they burst into laughter. So, strategically, using the skills of razzle dazzle to
Yeah,
engage the system, I guess, is
yeah.
yeah.
Rather than a way of leading life.
Yeah, rather than a way of I think of it as the octopus ink, fogging the situation with my old, deflection tactics, which I still also do. I hope for a few more decades because I still got those bad things.
You know, it's so funny, Jake. I too am the younger brother of an older sister,
Okay.
uh,
Uh-oh.
and I and I think I have a little bit of the razzle dazzle thing,
Yeah.
for fogging a situation. But I've had a similar journey of learning to use it as part of a more thoughtful process. So I appreciate what you were saying. Made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Well, as a fellow younger brother of an older sister, I'll share this is like a working hunch I have about this particular position in the family
Hmm.
system. 15 years ago, I was on a board of an association, national board, and the president of the association was a younger brother of an older sister. And he had vaulted to this position of national leadership and renown. And as I sat around that board table, I had the thought, this guy doesn't know how to sit on the throne. Like he doesn't,
Mm,
like there's something about being at the head of the table requires the capacity to, I don't know, uphold some stature and to occupy the office.
yeah.
And instead, it seemed like this guy should be in the back of the room throwing spitballs. And it was so useful to me because I thought, me too. You know, so I have this working hunch as I've sort of tracked younger brothers of older sisters, since that little light bulb. This may be 5 cent like pop stand psychology infecting Bowen theory here, but um, I have this idea that younger brothers of older sisters, because of gender norms, are often uh, asked to assume leadership or to take as the younger brothers of older sisters are both the baby of the family and the eldest male at the same time.
Hmm.
And I what I've seen is that can create um, invitations to leadership, and also because younger brothers of older sisters have grown up as the baby in the family, at worst, an incapacity to, they
Mm,
a pattern of fumbling it. Um, at best, I have seen younger brothers of older sisters figure out how to do it, but it is not uh, the leadership of sort of dignity and poise. There's often a little crackle with it, and some change leadership is endemic. I don't know. What do you think about that? What have you
uh,
seen?
no, that actually makes a lot of sense that you're both kind of the oldest boy and the baby at the same time. And
Hmm.
so you develop this thing of kind of being invited to be responsible, but also maybe trouble with being responsible in some
Yeah,
ways.
yeah,
Uh, at its best, there's a little sparkle still there.
right. Yeah, definitely. And I was working with a company a few years ago where Multi-generational company. Um, New president is a younger brother and older sister. He was not the caricature of the song and dance man that younger brothers
Hmm.
can be. He was stayed quiet, but I'll be damned if he wasn't uh, oriented toward change in in
Mm,
a pretty serious way that I think would be different had he been an older brother. Um,
mm,
I think elders can also lead change. So maybe I'm not being articulate about the. I don't think it was personality or expression that was the younger brother in him, because he was a quiet guy. He was a planner, methodical, but there was a useful restlessness. He was not burdened with the upholding the mantle uh,
mm,
of tradition as eldest can sometimes be. I mean, this is broad
hmm.
stroke, but so that's
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
broad. Yeah,
No, that's interesting. Maybe creativity is a
yeah.
word.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Do you find it helpful when you're working with companies to think in terms of sibling position with an aspect in your kind of the picture you shape of people?
Of all of the concepts in Bowen theory, sibling position, uh, I wrestle with most.
Uh,
I wrestle with other concepts for just trying to understand them, but sibling position, it's validity. It's the least
yeah,
researched and established. There's um, there's that famous clause, all else being equal. Well,
nothing's
when
ever
is all
equal.
else? Yeah. And so I think that it can, and people can get really into typologies and individual labels. And so it, sibling position, I have heard misused, I think, as as like an astrological sign or as a deterministic box.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, so yes, I keep it in mind, but it's I probably hold it looser than others.
yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Um, so you help companies get unstuck. What
At
the
my best, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So well, maybe let's start with the problems that you tend to face. How do companies get stuck? What's some
Yeah.
things you've seen?
An umbrella would be this. Oh gosh, I just wrote about him. I'm trying to remember his name. Anyway, some systems thinker whose name I can't remember had this line that every problem was once a solution. And so I think the solutions of yesterday or yesteryear, which may have been adaptive in their time
Hmm.
or in the moment for getting through, get get frozen or
Hmm.
become enshrined as the way we do things, and actually block the capacity to adapt today and tomorrow. Um, Another John Kotter, the change theorist from Harvard Business School, has this line: "The greatest obstacle to change for a company is its greatest success." You know, in the past, it's people get addicted to the old ways. So, for instance, a common one is a high performer or a high producer who's bringing in a lot of revenue and making life miserable back at the office.
Mm,
Somebody who um, just is burning through relationships, but people
mm,
like the money, and so what to do? Uh, or um, or a leader who under communicates in various ways, who will not download the vision or the priorities in his or her head sufficient to create a context for coordination or for even delegation. So people end up chasing the hurricane of this often founder or entrepreneur, who's wary about, that's the pattern of delegating to others is not what helped the founder start the company. Not sleeping and working incredible hours and being all things to all people, whatever it takes. That's what they brought to the
Hmm.
dance. So I guess generally it's old patterns that used to be successful and no longer are. And compounding that, a response from the relationship system that tends toward, all the familiar anxiety born patterns of fight, flight, flee. It's the elephant in the room with patterns of avoidance. Everybody knows it, nobody's saying it, those kinds of things.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what would you say um, are some of the signs? What would people be noticing when these patterns aren't useful anymore, and they're starting to become uh, stuck?
Yeah. There is an increasing gap between word and deed, a lack of integrity that erodes over time. So a
Mm.
company might have its core values from a workshop in 2008 on the website, but that ain't what's happening, and people know it. So that's a pattern. I'd say an over reliance on structural solutions, which I see as quick fixes. If
Mm.
only we um, write a policy, if only we do a reorg, move all the chairs on the Titanic. Uh, these are which and there is value in those things. I mean, that it's a whole set of moves that a leader can make. It is my belief that until and unless what's gummed up in the relationship system is resolved or untangled, uh, the structural stuff or the superficial stuff, you know, will last a day or a week.
Mm. Mm. And what's the thing in the center that's gumming it up? That's only gonna make the superficial things last a week or so.
Um, I am worried about being a one-trick pony.
Ah,
But I think I
well,
have
let's.
a single
Well,
diagnosis that's,
well, how about this? Where do you start? Like, how are you thinking
yeah.
about a company when you go in? Like,
I
where's
I
your
think
thinking?
I do suspect in every case that right in the middle of it is this inverse relationship between elevated anxiety and lower differentiation,
Mm.
and that building on that usually there is a problem with that higher up on the org chart and usually with the person at the top. So that is my working catch-all hunch, that somewhere there is, usually toward the top, there is a leader who has insufficiently defined himself in important relationships, or herself,
Mm.
and is using short-term anxiety-driven gambits, avoidance, blow-ups, shouting at people, hiding under his desk, whatever, all these things, as ways to avoid really getting clear and doing the hard
Mm.
thing.
Mm. Mm. Do you, if a company's calling you in, do you find that it's the person that you need, or to be speaking to, or in other words, uh, are these guys, are the people at the top, guys, gals, willing to? Do you find that they're willing to look at themselves?
It varies. A hospice nurse 20 years ago, I was talking with a hospice nurse, and she
Mm.
said she no longer believed in denial. She believed in deferral. She said people have an innate capacity to pace out how much change, how much reality they're willing to deal with at one time. And she
Mm.
said, if somebody's got a few weeks to live, it's not my job to rip off their band-aid. It's not my job to hold up the mirror and say, you're dying. So I think I take that.
I like that.
So, yes, I think it does ultimately come down to people at the top, the willingness to take a look at themselves, how they're functioning, how they're sabotaging themselves and thereby others. And that can take a while. So if I can
Mm.
create, if I don't need to have like a heroic cathartic moment where on day one, there's this sort of magical Hollywood moment, but if I can like create a context in which sort of like what happened with the church over 5 years in a
Mm.
coaching or consulting relationship.
Beautiful.
If I can let them sniff me out, if I can let them road test in a little way
Yeah.
some new thoughts, then little by little they get themselves ready, or not,
Mm.
or they get
Yeah,
pissed off at me and fire me.
I hear that. So it's really it's like it's almost like the coaching. It's a relationship process in itself when you're working with a business.
Oh yeah, yeah,
It's not just coming in and injecting something. It's
yeah. And that relationship process involves me too as a very active part. There are particular patterns that I bring of avoidance or of I don't know, just all the fragile, immature tricks that I bring.
Mhm.
So I am equally working on those in this relationship to try
Mm.
to come back to principles and to what how I'm trying to show up.
Yeah. How do you road test? You talked about coming, giving them a little uh, not a sample, but seeing if they buy into kind of what you're talking about, and it's kind
Yeah,
of a building up. How do you do that?
you and I earlier were talking about experiments, or you were saying that's part of your practice, and I think similarly, I am cautious to prescribe an experiment that somebody else should do. Be I when I do, it's not that I never do, but when I do, I see lower ownership in them. They in some ways sometimes they're performing for me, or they're rebelling against me and my expectations.
Mm.
I get mixed up in what should be theirs. So if through the process of coaching or the process of the consultation, um, organically something arises that seems like an unaddressed situation, unresolved, um, I'll talk with somebody about that and
Mm.
dialogue with them toward what seems manageable. For instance, in this CEO was so frustrated by this lovable old executive who was older than him, older than the CEO, and the CEO actually had a lot of respect for the guy, but
Mhm.
he uh, but he kept on the executive kept on bringing to these weekly stand-up meetings insufficient reports. It was like, and so the CEO, what do I do? This is somebody I admire. He mentored me early on, and yet as the company needs accurate information and needs progress on this project. Um, so if I'm remembering right, the experiment for him in that moment, this was pretty early on in working together, um, was to say in the same room as the person, not a text or an email, but in the same room, to say, What I'm asking for at these weekly stand-up meetings is A, B, and C. Um, how do you think what you're bringing matches what I'm asking for? I mean,
Mm.
I'm kind of recreating, but I think he did something like that. Just essentially, here's what I want. Here's my standard. Uh, what are you thinking? Or so that's an example of like a bite-sized experiment, which
Yeah.
as we're talking doesn't sound like a big deal, but I can imagine if I had to hold a former mentor who I admired to account, I might avoid bringing it up for 3 years. Even, I mean, this is what gets me. Even as the place is burning down, I don't.
Hmm.
It was not burning down in that case, but it sure was obstructing progress.
Yeah.
But yeah, over and over again, these leaders, these sweethearts, who look so impressive in public, and behind closed doors. Oh, they're just like me. They're avoiding that hard conversation. They're avoiding that short-term spike in anxiety, the threat to the relationship, and at great cost to the company often. Um,
Mm.
so humans.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that the anxiety you were talking about that can trickle down in some ways into the company?
Yeah, yeah. So, um, Bowen talked about this, and in administrative systems that it's useful to look at the person. If there's problems down here in the org chart, look to the person at the top. Edwin Friedman talked about peacemongers at the top, people who are going around trying to make people happy, smooth things over, often inadvertently produce conflict, unresolved
Mm.
conflict, for lack of clarity, at the top.
Hmm.
So yeah, it can show up. I mean, to some degree, I would say always. To some degree, to the extent that there's unresolved fusion in each of us, and none of us has reached
Yeah.
a promised land of 100 on the scale of differentiation. Yeah, that's in there. And so, for um, for a human resources person, for whom often the HR office is like the catchment system for unresolved conflict. People are coming in there. Uh, and being helpers, they spend a lot of their day solving people's problems. Often, if I'm an HR person and I've now noticed a pattern of the same kinds of things, lack of clarity,
Mm.
it's an opportunity, should I get the nerve to take it, to talk to my boss and report this pattern I see, and my thought about or my question about what they make of it, my thought about this lack of clarity, and my view that it's on him or her to provide that
Mm.
clarity, that kind of managing up. So I don't think, if you're not the boss, I don't think all is lost. I just think it takes moxie.
I, li- I like that. I haven't heard that word in a long time.
Yeah.
I like it. You were talking about anxiety as just being this. I think Bowen theory talks about this too, a response to a threat, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and we're
Mm-hmm.
just so damn sensitive as human beings to
Mm.
shifting around perceived threats,
Yeah.
like you were talking about this guy with his mentor. I don't want to disrupt the relationship, upset him, and so I'm
Yeah.
just gonna not say anything. And
Yeah.
we do this all the time. I'm always amazed at my own capacity to be for those immaturities to creep up, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think, my wife and I just celebrated our 23rd anniversary, and when I think about what has helped things work, what helps us not be on cruise control, checked out, you know, from each other, it is the willingness of one of us or the other to turn toward each other about once a year. It's not like every day we're being brave, but
Uh,
you know, about once a year and decide to take the risk of saying what's up as we see it and to
mm,
um, effectively renegotiate the terms of comfort into the terms of desired uh, shift or progress or adaptation so that we don't
mm,
have to forever be upholding the vows we took when we were 29. We don't have to live like 29-year-olds when we're old farts now. We get to.
uh,
So, and I do think that's for me, that takes keeping in view the larger vision, the larger payoff of a mature marriage over and against the risk of hurting someone I love, of being rejected by someone I love, of
mm,
adding stress to my day when I got emails I haven't responded to. It's a it's a trade-off, because it's no move toward differentiation goes unpunished. So I take that seriously.
yeah. When you say that, you mean any move a person makes to kind of take a position for themselves with another, they might come up against some kind of friction, or there's a challenge in that. It's
Yeah, almost always they will, I think. I mean, it's
yeah,
I love Ed Friedman's line that uh when someone is differentiating, uh they can expect in response either seduction or sabotage. And seduction sounds like, oh, but it was so much better the other way, or you're the only one who can do it, or we really liked it. That's what seduction sounds like, is that soothing,
yeah,
lulling siren call back to the way things were. And sabotage sounds like, how dare you? Who do you think you are? And my corollary to Ed Friedman's idea is, yes, I think that can come from the environment, from other people. I've noticed it also comes from myself. Like,
yeah,
who do I think I am? Saying no to this person with their reasonable request. Just, who am I to have boundaries or, or whatever. So, yeah, I just, to the extent that the relationship system is functioning in a way that is interpreted to mean safety, coordination, all of these basic things to survival. My effort to differentiate, to necessarily disrupt what's the peace treaty
hmm
is gets at that level of survival. It wakes up the uh-oh in other people and in me. So
hmm
I think I have to be ready for that.
mm, yeah. Do you find that when you like companies have to be ready for that too? Like if they're, I mean, I guess if they're coming to you, they sense that something's off, or they want something.
Yeah, usually when a company triangles in a consultant, an outside person, they have tried 50 things, including living with it and seeing if that's okay. And then somehow
Hmm
the decision has been made that no, this is untenable, this will not stand. And so they've tried any number of interventions. And so by the time, not just me, I just think, couples who go to marriage counseling, et
hmm
cetera, I think that move to triangle in a third outsider is is sparked by distress. And so I think that um, sometimes it is framed as a desire to move toward change, sort of a goal-directed change. And you know, I I think that's credible. And often it begins with a cry of distress. I don't know what I
mm
want. I don't know where I'm headed. I just know this hurts. This hurts too much. Or in the organizational setting, people are quitting, people are demoralized.
Mm.
The money's great, but people are miserable and leaving, or I'm not getting the response. I thought people wanted collaboration, and now they're looking at their phones in the meeting. What's wrong with these people? I keep shouting at them to collaborate, you know.
I know, I hear you. Um, so there's some kind of distress that brings people in, and they can have a goal attached to it, or just have a sense that something's not working.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I've
And
seen
I,
that with couples too, Jake.
yeah, yeah. And so how do you respond on the intake?
Um, I try to get a sense of, well, where each of them are at now in the present,
Yeah,
uh, what's actually going on, uh, and then get a sense of what's been going on, and
yeah,
try to get a bigger picture
yeah,
to see
yeah,
what those patterns are that might be my old solutions that might be not working anymore.
yeah, right. Read the landscape.
Yeah.
I think I see in consulting, it's the discovery process or the explore, there's sort of an initial, and there's intake in therapeutic settings, similar kind of feeling each other out. I see an implicit contracting process going on there.
Mm,
And um, I try to surface what are we doing here and what's my role in it as part of that process. What's going on here, or what are we doing here? For me, is essentially saying, are we after? Is this thing that we're doing only symptom relief, symptom management, or is it? Are you interested in a shift? Are you interested in greater maturity? Greater
mm,
clarity. That sort of second order changes rather than just whack a mole. So
yeah.
that's something I try to surface, partly to negotiate expectations that this isn't just a bag of tricks learned in a day long training. And then secondly, what's my role in it is in this sort of implicit contracting. Uh, I'm launching a course next week, late next week, clergy course, and this guy signed up. It's pretty late for him to sign up, and so he was talking to me, and he was saying he was letting me know that he has a pattern of being disappointed with continuing education programs. And I said to him, with this thought in mind of contracting, I said, well, I think our course is going to be a real challenge for you because I have to say we are mediocre at best. We're barely adequate. We don't really know what we're doing. And so I just want to let you know that this pattern of being disappointed um, uh, is potentially some practice for you, or an opportunity for you to see see what you're going to do about not being disappointed, because I don't know if you can count on too much from us. And he sort of chuckled and I sort of chuckled, but I was giving that hot potato right back to him. Brother, this is your work. If you're going to do that, um, so I guess that's some of how I try to frame it up, because I think, especially with a consultant or therapist, maybe to the extent that the frame up is that I'm some wizard who's going to
Hmm.
produce, that they can outsource the change process to me. I just haven't seen that work. And
Mm-mm.
and I have seen, if I can help frame up a process where they are, you know, the heat of their intrinsic motivation is dialed up, there's a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I also like this idea of the implicit contract. I never thought of it that way, but I think I do that with couples too, in the way I kind of talk to them, ask questions, and without trying to be the one that's going to offer the wisdom solution or something.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. In
and
the
putting it back, like how are each of you going to take responsibility for this thing?
yeah. The 1970s therapist Carl Whitaker had this line that I like. He said, ideally, the coach or therapist is responsible for structure, and the client is responsible for motivation. And when
Beautiful.
the client starts dictating structure and when the coach starts dictating motivation, or bringing motivation, things get screwy. He didn't add the things get screwy part, but, so I try to keep that in mind. Like when they start saying, well, the it's going to look like this, and this, and you can't talk to this person, and you got to, I say, okay, I don't work like that. I'm
Uh,
trying to think through. And likewise, if I am over invested, if I'm working harder than them on their own problem, if I'm more motivated, um, it's not fair to them. It doesn't that over functioning doesn't help them
mhm.
grow.
Absolutely. Um, I'm thinking of the role of the therapist that you were just talking about. I
Mhm.
liked Carl Whitaker's phrase, structure, the client's is motivation. What are what are some qualities that you find um, in in leaders that are doing this thing, leading well, for lack of a better way to say it?
Yeah, it's a marriage of thoughtfulness and nerve. Uh, you know,
I like that. Yeah.
there's this one guy I've been working with for a few years, CEO, and this year he has been managing himself in an unexpected major change process with multiple stakeholders, and just have so much respect for him. I see him, he is deeply rooted in some core principles about what he's about,
Mm,
how he's going to show up in a room. And he's a soft-spoken person. This is not bluster and bravado. He's just very clear. And by the way, he's a younger brother, so there's hope for us. Uh, and and yet he also, people can sort of polish and shine their principles in the back office for years. He has a capacity to define himself uh, with risk to important
mm,
matters. And I have seen that this year in relationship to people whose response could have had high stakes for himself and for his team, who he cares about. And I've also seen him demonstrate the same pattern in his family, in his
mm,
marriage, um, and in fact, in the middle of this business upheaval this year, as um, he's been like an experienced pilot flying through turbulence. Just, he's been here before. He took his family out, his adult children, his wife, out to dinner, um, to use all of this as an opportunity to talk with them about what
mm,
he's learning, what he's thinking, and to ask them what they're seeing in him, but also in their own lives. I mean, it was like this beautiful uh, self mastery and high level relationship management at work and at home that I just think is rare. And in none of that is the brilliant solution or the genius. I don't even know if from a distance he looks very impressive. He is quiet and unassuming and humble and all these things, but that's the leader I'm going to put my money on. That kind of
mm,
that kind of self-possession and courage.
mm. I feel like that's it's attractive when you're around it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it's an infectious in a positive way, contagious in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that has kept me swimming in the Bowen theory waters is seeing what it looks like in old age.
Mm,
The sages or the elders of Bowen theory, or in the Bowen network, and again, different personalities. There's not like a particular expression, but people who have worked on differentiation for years, I think, have a self-possession and composure, and an openness and curiosity that
yeah.
for me is inspiring in conversation. It's these are people. I don't know what they're going to say next. I don't know what they're reading or thinking. I don't know what challenge they're going to bring to me, and that's exciting to me.
Mm, yeah. That makes, I hear that. What? Hmm. Well, I have a couple of thoughts. One is about this idea of forming principles, operating principles that you were talking about with this guy. And
Yeah,
the other one is this connection, the link between the personal and the professional.
yeah.
You could tackle whichever one you want.
I think, especially if I am seeking to forge relationships of distributed responsibility with direct reports. If I want them to think and decide without coming to play Mother May I on every call, then it is useful for me to take a step back from the front line so that I'm not saying, oh, you should order those staples and not those staples. Oh, you should, these,
Mm,
it's use, even if I have an opinion about my favorite staples, like shut up about it, and and instead to use principles that sort of I think of leadership in terms of concentric circles. If I can
mm,
stay in that outer lane that transcends and includes all else within it in the organization, and really articulate clearly and continually reflect, for the sake of alignment, where are we headed, what will be true about this company, those sorts of things, then people have the boundaries and the outcome within which they can be free and creative. They can figure out the 10 ways up the
mm,
mountain. So I think it, especially higher up on the organizational chart, if a leader can resist the urge to provide solutions for day to day, but can consistently and clearly convey principles, that sort of higher level thoughts. For instance, boy, I don't know what you're going to do about this, but I know that at this company, respect is one of our core values.
mm.
So, what would you say are your options in the context of respect for everybody? Might be
Oof.
a useful thing that a leader could say. So this isn't a leader abdicating, saying, well, I don't know, you go figure it out. And usually leaders who've been micromanaging, now what you need to do is talk to this person on this day at this hour in this way. When they're trying to get unhooked from micromanaging, often that kind of leader will swing all the way onto, hands off, not my problem. And I think that's just as counterproductive. So
Mm,
all to say, to have some to have some principles for the company, high level, enduring, um, and also for oneself.
mm.
I think is useful. Um, yeah, uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I love that idea that I don't need to worry so much about the micro behaviors
Mhm.
and micromanaging, if I can set up the right guidelines, the right principles, larger principles, then there's a freedom to act within them.
Yeah.
Um, and it leaves more autonomy with the individual to figure that out, more
Yeah.
flexibility.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think morale skyrockets in those contexts. There's that this is an old business book now by Daniel Pink called Drive, where he talks about he's like the Malcolm Gladwell of leadership. He popularizes other people's research. So he says that intrinsic motivation relies upon uh, MAP, mastery, autonomy, and
Yeah.
purpose. And that, when employees can get good at something, develop mastery, when they exercise autonomy, control over decisions, when they serve a larger purpose. Um, this one company I worked with, this was toward the end of COVID. One of the guys said, "Did you get toilet paper delivered to your house or delivered to the store so you could use it during COVID when everybody was stockpiling toilet paper?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "That was us." For me, that's purpose. That's somebody who is clear about the bigger picture that his daily efforts serve. So again, I just think the leader who can be creating in those kinds of environments,
Mm.
I just think they free up a lot more time for golf for themselves because they don't need to be in the office breathing down people's necks.
Yeah, yeah. Free up energy for themselves. And I think we were talking about threat response. I think when you're being micromanaged, your threat response senses are out and on. And on the other side, if you just have the principles and goals, you're activating more of the creative mind. Like, how am I gonna be responsible for this? What are my options? What can I do?
Yeah. In English class in junior year in high school, I got an F on my term paper. The teacher had uh, detailed the assignment to such a small degree that I had this dilemma in myself because whatever I did in response to her assignment was me abdicating my autonomy. It was being her puppet. And
Hmm.
and I at that time uh, chose what I thought was my own freedom, my own ability to drive my own bus rather than submit to her control. I think that is the dilemma that employees have with micromanaging bosses. It's
Mm.
will I be controlled or will I be, or will I be accountable? And people want to be both, but uh, I think if I'm a controlling boss, if I'm a micromanaging boss, I'm setting up a lot of unnecessary friction with my direct reports, a lot of from that dilemma where
Mm.
they may produce the project or the result at the end of the day, but they're ashamed of themselves or they're not, because they became my puppet. So yeah. Anyway, all this goes back, I think, to leaders being able to provide a higher level, a principle way of talking and presenting.
I love it. And so how did this idea of forming principles of managing oneself at work, what's been your experience with that translating into personal life, like your vignette of this executive uh, managing himself principally and with his company, and then having this dinner with his family.
Yeah.
Um, I thought that was a great example of it, but can you speak a little more to it?
I think I think people who avoid resolving unresolved fusion with their family of origin have a very hard time differentiating in their current nuclear family or in the workplace.
Mm.
Uh, what I see and experience in myself is that at best it's a set of tricks or tactics that might work short term, but that if I'm really after, in Jenny Brown's phrase, growing myself up, uh, then then it takes thawing some of the functional positions I've been frozen into in my family of origin. I am so grateful that I have spent most of my adult life here in East Tennessee in the hornet's nest of my family of origin, where I see my beloveds on a regular basis,
Mm,
have the opportunity to represent myself as the adult that I am and not winging in for a miserable day every Christmas to reenact the 12-year-old I once was. I think that my effort to grow myself up, and I have to, I give a lot of credit to my relatives. They also are, and I think there is that's some of the theory of change with differentiation that my efforts, you know, um, make it impossible for them to reenact old patterns of when I was 12.
yeah.
And I think that investment on the home front has paid dividends in
Mm,
leadership. I think that I've softened. I used to be a more of a fundamentalist about this. And I think that I've seen where leaders who try things or sort of rough draft some things in the workplace can then have sort of an evidence-based experiential library that they can refer to as they go into the dragon's lair of their
mm,
family of origin. So I don't think it's necessarily one or the other, but I
yeah.
think for me the bigger payoffs back home.
Yeah. But you bigger payoffs back home, but it sounds like you can work on it from every direction. If you're working on it from every direction, it's useful.
I think so. Yeah.
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 Jake, speaking of transitions, tell me a little bit about succession in companies, family businesses, this type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, especially with family businesses, there is complexity that I love because with relatives around the table, a boardroom can seem like Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving can seem like a boardroom. And it can be confusing about, who's wearing what hats when. Uh, there is a long time pattern, which some say is a myth, of what's called shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in family businesses, which is that
Mm,
over 3 generations, some high percentage, I forget the number, but 90% of families lose their wealth. That the founding generation gains it, and then because the baton is not passed well, it is squandered and dispersed. And so succession has high stakes, not only for money in the bank, but also for who can show up at Thanksgiving. And
hmm
um, and it is also a time fraught with elevated anxiety. I mean, a lot of us saw that show Succession on
Oh,
HBO based on the Murdoch family, the Fox News family, and so that was a peek into some of what can go on.
mm,
The To the extent that the current leader uh, has become fused with the role and has the delusion that he or she is the only one who could uphold things, there can be the case in which succession is delayed
mm,
to the extent that there's lack of clarity in who's up next or even what the role is, because in the 21st century with social media, and different kinds of distribution, the job may be different than it was in 1982.
mhm,
Without really looking into these fraught questions and resolving them, without developing a clear process so that this high anxiety, complex moment with many different parties can be guided in a way that everyone has a voice and it's not a food fight. It is a pivotal moment for a company
mm.
and for a family, and both things are happening at the same time.
Uh, and then you have, I mean, it's fascinating because then you have all the individual insecurities, fears that on all sides that are part of this. Like I was thinking about, you said crawling out of your mom's shadow. I wonder if some of this stuff is going on in a family secession too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think when, say, a parent has been publicly successful and has and especially that public success has come at the cost of relational connection. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, the familiar responses probably a lot of us know are, for the kid is either to be the black sheep, or or to be the copycat, the copy paste,
Hmm.
just like dad kind of version.
Hmm.
Um, And so, what does it take to differentiate, to be oneself, to think for oneself, and stay connected? It
Mm.
is, and some of the challenges, if my father was an entrepreneur and a founder, making it up as he goes, um, and I am second, I'm Gen 2, the second up in line. The kind of leadership asked of me is not necessarily that entrepreneurial leadership. I've worked with military people. I've worked with people in conservative religious traditions. These systems that have prior agreements and frameworks. Uh,
Hmm.
in differentiation isn't going rogue, isn't burning the place down and just making it up, as an entrepreneur might. And so, what does it take if I'm next in line? My dad founded this company to balance fidelity to the enduring values, which matter a lot now to the family and to employees, while also at the same time being clear about my assessment of what's needed now. Often there's long delayed changes, or, the people are still working on 1997 computers or things like that. So what does it take to introduce change that paradoxically enshrines or strengthens the lineage and the
Mm.
heritage? For me, those are often the leaders I'm much more fascinated by. Is the sort of
Yeah.
next up, rather than the make it up from scratch entrepreneur. I think they
Yeah.
got it easy, but
Yeah. 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 There's no top-down pressure in that way, or not none, but it's different.
yeah. I mean, they
Yeah.
probably spent their 20s eating ramen noodles, so there's
Yeah. Yeah.
not all great, but yeah, it's a bind for that next generation.
Yeah. There's I imagine there's countless ways this thing can go wrong. What are some things that help it go right?
Uh, Lower anxiety, higher differentiation. I mean,
Mm.
I do think, so in this instance, I've been talking about father son.
Yeah.
I think to the extent that the father and son have been practicing patterns of avoidance with each other, that they're not really leaning into each other and saying, "What's it like for you? How is this for you?"
Yeah.
One these folks I was working with, it was actually a multiple generation company, and the father, the current office holder, was saying, "I just don't want to do it like my dad did," and his son would
Mm.
get frustrated and say, "That was years ago. That has no relevance. That's we're talking about today." And uh, in that conversation, I was thinking, "Oh, you just whiffed. You missed this great opportunity, son, to at least get the instruction manual, or at least understand your dad's perspective, that he's whatever he's doing, as crazy as it is in reaction to when he was on the receiving end of the baton years
Mhm.
ago." Um, so I think that's
Mm.
one of the things that can help is the relationship process. I do think there are established structures and processes, to figure out these three circles in family business: the owner, the ownership circle, the family circle, and the employee working in the company circle,
Ah,
and to
yeah.
clarify what's happening when, and to and to establish rules of the game, governance in each sphere. What are we going to adhere to establish goals, to establish process jigs? Like
Mm,
inevitably when we fight, what's going to be our way of fighting? Those things don't need to be invented every time for these predictable patterns. So, whether it's trusts, whether it's governance documents, whether it's policies, um, these things have happened since time immemorial. So
yeah,
that also can help those structural uh,
yeah, yeah.
things.
The structural and then the relational
Yeah,
component. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I love it. Um, I think that's so important, that avoidance that can creep into a relation, the father-son relationship, and how does
yeah,
either party work on that? Think it.
yeah, yeah,
Um, Jake, you got a book coming out.
yeah.
I don't know if people know that you went to the Iowa Writers Workshop, which is actually pretty prestigious writing venue, writing school. Uh, tell me, what's with this writing thing, and what the hell do you have coming out?
What's with this writing thing has been my lifelong question. So, so I'm my anxiety's up now. Uh, yeah, I think Bowen theory, the transmission of Bowen theory suffers for the poverty of accessible, relatable, readable sources.
Mm,
Uh, I honor and value people back in the engine room working out theory, pure theory,
hmm
as it corresponds to evolutionary biology. So lots of respect. I also think that there are some popularizers of in the Bowen network who are working on the transmission aspect. So for me, this is time and again with clients, I have wanted something to hand to them and say, hey, look at this, see if it makes sense. Or, you know, relationship triangles don't make sense. Read this. In a way that the busy leader who doesn't want to spend 3 years at the postgraduate program can receive and understand. And so this is my effort to, it's a short book, case studies, hopefully accessible language, to have that thing that I can hand to people.
Oh, I love it. What's your routine? Do you write in the morning, at night, when you were working on the book?
That was no. I'm married to somebody who wakes up at the same time every day and has the same morning ritual. And in reciprocal fashion, I tend to be sort of chaotic and full of bursts. So it was May to the beginning of August this year. I was just in sort of this burst. And
Mm.
that's how I've tended to work, is this hyper focus. So yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
But
Interesting.
thank you. Thanks for giving a shout out. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think the theory needs those the hardcore theorists in the back room, like you were talking about, connecting theory to evolutionary biology, and but it also needs people like you that can put it into practical, simple language that people can chew on and think about,
Yeah. Hope so.
th- and that it
So
makes sense. So I'm looking forward to reading it.
thank you. Thank you.
I got one more question for you.
Okay.
Oh, what's something that you'd like people to take away that work with you?
Huh. It's not too late. Would be a takeaway thought that
Mm,
whatever mess you're in, whatever despair you experience, you are not a victim of circumstance. You still have choices. You still have good that you can harvest. You still have moves to make. And they may not be the moves you want, but with the hand you've been dealt, they are invitations to choose and to
mm,
act.
mm. Beautiful, Jake. Thanks
Yeah.
for being
Thank
here.
you, Guillermo. All right. See you down the road.